I first wanted to become a doctor when I was 9 years old. It was an answer to a question in church. And I said, I want to be a doctor when someone asked me what I wanted to be. And that sort of stuck. It was stuck for many, many years. I was born in South Carolina, and we moved from South Carolina to New York. And I remember that the doctors I had in South Carolina, and this is in the 50s, were African American. The doctors I had when I was older in White Plains, New York, were all white. The difference in situation had a profound effect on me, I'm sure. I have trouble deciding what effect it did have. I don't know if it affected my decision to become a doctor at all. Science and medicine was something I was always interested in. But growing up in a segregated community and moving from a segregated community to an integrated community at a very young age had a profound effect. In fact, I went from an all-black school in segregated Spartanburg, South Carolina, to an all-white school in White Plains, New York, where I was the only black student in the whole school. And that actually continued to be my pattern all through high school and college, where I was actually mostly in an environment where I was the only black student around. I don't know if there's any place where we're doing a really good job with education about Black history at all. The history of my people is really not a prominent part of the history that's taught in schools. It's not in the books. There is in the curricula information about Martin Luther King. Every year we celebrate Martin Luther King, and so that's the taste of Black history we get. I think that it has to do with self-respect, so that kids need to see individuals who are similar to them in order to achieve success, to see respect for themselves and to see what they can achieve. And to know how important their ancestors were to the development of this country. Now, I think that having said that, it's important for everyone to continue to learn and not just stop with what you see in a newspaper blurb about Martin Luther King, and learn about all the things that went on. The other place where we learn a lot in our country is through the media. People learned about slavery primarily because of, the book about the movies about slavery, or you learn about the Civil War through movies about Civil War, and that begins to affect the way in which people in this country view things. And I think we may need to do a better job of doing that. I really believe that the media can do a very good, and by that not only movies but television shows can do a very good job of designing what we know about something as a result of it. Now, unfortunately, I think there are many people in this country who think that Black Panther is truly the history of Africans in the world. It's not, but there is. But it just shows how it can be used, how you can use the media to begin to cause people to start thinking more about things. And Roots had that effect. Like I guess 30, 40 years ago now, in people beginning to think about slavery and what it was all about. Right? Now, it doesn't last in the public mind for a very long time, but it does show that there's a great deal of power in getting empowering and that using that method to get a message across. Black history is inseparable from American history, and there's an economic piece. Many of the political forces that exist in this country are related to the presence of African Americans. Culturally, the country's been affected by it, so it is not separate. It is a very important piece. Now, one of the things we do in this country is we celebrate diversity. And when the celebration of diversity, we understand how diversity contributed to the whole. No one talks about Frederick Douglass or Booker T. Washington or all the other individuals who were involved in the struggle. By not recognizing the contributions of people of color, we begin to denigrate them as individuals, and we ignore their contributions. And I think that has a negative effect on diversity. This is the 400th year anniversary of slavery in the United States. In 1619, the Dutch brought the first slaves into this country. And everyone in that community, the slave community, millions of people, all were involved in the struggle to move from slavery to freedom. every community in the country added to the success that is America. And we own a part of America because of what's happened. In the case of the African American community, it's the labor of millions of Black people that built the economic power of this country. And that's forgotten. It was primarily an agrarian country. The agrarian economy was built on the back of slaves. And those slaves are important to what has happened now. And that story isn't really told unless you do some reading. I think it's very important for everyone to do that, to really learn about the legacy of slavery in this country and how it is still today affecting many of the things that are going on in our communities. I guess at my age, you begin to think about legacy and what that actually is. And legacy is a continuous thing. There's a legacy that affected me, and that legacy is not only the people I had around me, but also the millions of people who came before me that, as a result of what they did, allowed me to do what I do. I often think about my grandparents. They were actually pretty big people, and my grandfather on my mother's side was involved in starting Black colleges in the 1930s or so. And my grandfather on my father's side had a big farm, and he actually employed workers at cotton fields. So I come from a family, at least at that level, where they were major figures in the community. I don't know whether or not they'd be very surprised at all that I've gotten to this point. I think they'd be very proud. I mean, my own parents are very proud of it, but no one would look at it as we didn't think you'd get there. I guess it's one of the other things that's important in my life as I talk about now. I was always given positive reinforcement. Everyone, all my relatives, always said, you're going to achieve something. And so the achievement of success is not a surprise. It's something that is fine. That's what's supposed to happen. It's funny. I don't see myself as being all that different and unique. I guess you think about gravitas. You walk around and think, and when you're a dean, and I quite frankly, I run a big institution, and I run two of them. I'm the only dean in the country who runs two medical schools, and I guess you have to think you feel different, right? Because when I walk into a room, people stand up, or people hold doors for me because I'm the dean, and I don't really think of myself that way. I don't feel the weight, and I think that's probably part of my makeup. I'm just not a very I'm not a very egocentric individual. I usually don't really present myself based on my title. I think that makes life a whole lot easier for me. So I don't feel it. I think if I did feel it, it'd be really hard. But one of the things that happens is that I have many young people, actually from all over the country, who call me, stop by to see me, to talk about how I got to the point where I am and what I did. Now, the truth of the matter is, I have no idea how I got here. It's probably God who brought me here. But I think there are a number of things that number of lessons that I can impart to them. One of the most important lessons is the fact that you can become a dean, and you can be African American, and you can be successful in medicine and the science and all those things. And I think that's very important. And so I'm very, very pleased that I'm able to do that. There's another legacy, however, and that is my patients. And one of the most important things to me is my work with young people. And that I see dramatically in practicing medicine. I do adolescent and young adult medicine. I spend a lot of time talking to young people about their life as well as their health. I ask things like, where do you go to school? What do you want to be when you grow up? What are the things that are important to you? And interestingly enough, many of the patients I've seen, again, over now half a century, remember those questions and remember those conversations and still come back to me and talk about those things. And I think that's one of the most important legacies. And it's thousands of individuals who I had contact with. And it's not an approach that I thought about. It's an approach that I think is I just did it. I think I wanted to know something about them. I wanted to have that impact on them, and they remember that. And so that's been another very important legacy. And I think that many of us, now us in this case, are people who have achieved, who are African American, have that legacy, and we walk around providing that message, and everything we do is part of that message, and it's important for everyone to see us, and for us to be visible, and for us to always be a model that people can follow. I'm very optimistic, and having lived through lots of diversity, I see things always moving ahead. So I know that this country is better off than it was back in the old days. I see a great deal of forward movement. I always believe that achievement comes from chaos, and the natural human state is to be chaotic. You never move in a straight line. You move in a crooked line to go everywhere. But if you look back, we're better off now than we were 10 years ago. God knows we were better off. When I grew up, people were being lynched, and were Jim Crow laws. Those, at least the lynchings are gone. The laws are changing. So things are moving ahead. And so that makes me be very optimistic. I think that most people, however, thinking about themselves, they usually look back at the times when they were younger and think of those as the good old days, and then think how bad things are now. I think they really make a mistake. And I think that kids are smarter today. The people have better jobs today. More people are graduating from high school. All the things that we want to improve are improving. It takes a whole lot of time, and we're moving in that direction. So I'm very, very optimistic about things.